The sky above the planet Arcadia Prime was a bruised shade of violet, marred by streaks of plasma fire and drifting debris from orbital battles. On the surface, the sprawling city of Erythrea lay in ruins. Once a beacon of prosperity for the Zelleran people, it now resembled a graveyard of shattered spires and burning fields. The invading Techrath forces had been relentless, their biomechanical armies tearing through defenses with chilling efficiency. Counselor Myra Veckel stood in the heart of the emergency command center, her green-scaled skin dulled with exhaustion. Around her, technicians scrambled to maintain communications, their movements frantic yet precise. A holographic display projected a grim image of the system, the Zelleran fleet decimated. Myra's once vibrant emerald eyes were now dull, shadowed by sleepless nights and the weight of impending defeat. "Send another transmission," Myra ordered, her voice tight but firm. "Someone has to respond." It was not a question. Her aide Kellen hesitated. His silver-blue complexion, usually calm and composed, betrayed a hint of doubt. "Counselor, we've already broadcast to every known ally and neutral party. No one has answered. The Council of 10 in the Triaxian cluster hasn't even acknowledged receipt." Myra's jaw clenched, her fingers tightening around the edge of the console. "Then broaden the range. Use the ancient codes if you have to. We cannot fall. Not like this." Kellen nodded and turned back to his console. His hands flew over the controls, initializing an older, broader spectrum frequency that hadn't been used in centuries. It was a last-ditch effort, a gamble on a technology that might not even function properly. Myra gazed at the holographic map, her heart sinking as the Techrath ships tightened their grip on Arcadia Prime. For centuries, the Zelleran people had cultivated alliances, traded resources, and offered aid to those in need. Yet now, in their darkest hour, the galaxy had turned a blind eye. The distress signal was sent again, a desperate cry echoing into the void. "This is Arcadia Prime of the Zelleran Commonwealth. We are under attack. Our defenses are failing. Please, anyone, help us." Hours passed. No answer came. The air in the command center grew heavy with despair, the once bustling room now eerily quiet, except for the hum of machines and the occasional static crackle from the comms. As Myra paced the room, a flicker of movement caught her eye. A small display in the corner of the room, an ancient communication device, linked to the broader galaxy, blinked to life. The symbol on the screen was unfamiliar, a simple insignia of a blue orb encased in a silver ring. Myra's pulse quickened. "Kellen, what is that?" she demanded, pointing to the display. Kellen rushed over, his eyes widening as he scanned the incoming data. "It's a response, Counselor, but it's not from any known ally or faction. The encryption is primitive, yet complex. I've never seen anything like it. Decrypt it, now." The room fell silent as Kellen worked, his fingers flying over the keys. Moments later, the static resolved into a clear signal. A voice, deep, steady, and unmistakably human, filled the room. "This is Admiral Elena Drake of the Terran Defense Armada. We've received your distress call. What's your status?" The words hung in the air like a lifeline. Myra's breath caught in her throat. The Terran Defense Armada? Humanity had been an enigma for decades, their fleets vanishing into the depths of the galaxy after the Orion Wars. Many in the Commonwealth believed them to be little more than a myth, a cautionary tale about the dangers of isolation. "Admiral Drake?" Myra said, stepping forward. Her voice wavered slightly as she spoke into the transmitter. "This is Counselor Myra Veckel of Arcadia Prime. Our planet is under siege by the Techrath. Our defenses are failing. We are on the brink of annihilation." Drake's voice was calm but carried an undercurrent of urgency. "Understood, Counselor. We're inbound to your location. What's the composition of the enemy forces?" Leon Griffith's line of communications dropped short. Kellen quickly brought up the latest intelligence, his voice steady as he relayed the information. "Admiral, the Tekkrath fleet consists of approximately 200 warships, supported by ground forces of biomechanical drones and assault units. Our planetary defenses are at 10% capacity, and our fleet has been decimated." A pause. Then Drake's response: "Hold your ground. Reinforcements are on their way. We'll handle the Tekkrath." As the transmission ended, the room erupted into activity. Technicians scrambled to update defense protocols and relay the news to scattered resistance forces. Myra stood at the center, her mind racing. Humanity had answered their call, but what could they possibly do against such overwhelming odds? Far across the galaxy, in a sector known as the Reaches, the human fleet began its preparations. It was an imposing sight, hundreds of ships, from nimble fighters to colossal dreadnoughts, their sleek designs bristling with weaponry and advanced shielding. The humans were a relatively new force in galactic politics, known more for their stubborn independence than their alliances. Left behind during the conflict and the wars that had taken place between the Galactic Council of Nations, which had forced the Gerophiles to leave World 17 on their own. They had kept to themselves since the end of the Orion Wars, decades earlier. Admiral Elena Drake stood on the bridge of the Sovereign, the flagship of the Terran Defense Armada. Her dark eyes scanned the data feed streaming across her command console. Around her, officers moved with the precision of a well-trained machine, their chatter a low hum of efficiency. "Admiral," said her comms officer, Ensign Rourke, breaking the routine, "we've intercepted a distress signal. Zelleran Commonwealth, planet Arcadia Prime." Drake arched an eyebrow. "Zelloran? I thought their allies had them covered." "Apparently not," Rourke replied, his tone uneasy. "The signal, it's desperate, ma'am. They've been broadcasting for days with no response." The bridge fell quiet. The unspoken question hung heavy. Should they intervene? "Bring it up," Drake ordered. The distress signal played on the main screen. Myra's voice, raw with exhaustion and despair, filled the room. As the transmission ended, a silence thicker than the void settled over the crew. "Admiral," said Commander Grant, her second-in-command, "with all due respect, the Zelleran Commonwealth never extended aid to us during the Orion Wars. Their priorities have never included humanity." Drake's lips thinned. "Perhaps not. But if we stand by while a people are annihilated, what does that make us?" Grant didn't reply, but the weight of Drake's words lingered. "Set a course for Arcadia Prime," Drake commanded, her voice steely. "Prepare the fleet for combat readiness. If no one else will answer their call, we will." The human fleet's engines roared to life, the darkness of space lighting up with the glow of their propulsion systems. As they began their journey, the crew moved with renewed purpose. For decades, humanity had been content to watch from the sidelines. But now, they would re-enter the stage of galactic politics with a message. Humanity would not stand idly by in the face of injustice. On Arcadia Prime, the hours dragged on. The Tekkrath forces continued their assault, their relentless waves of drones and warships pressing ever closer to the planet's core. Myra paced the command center, her eyes darting between the holographic displays and the comms console. The promise of reinforcements was a fragile thread, one that could snap at any moment. Then it happened. A low rumble began to grow in the distance, faint at first, but rapidly intensifying. Myra turned her gaze upward, her heart's pounding. The Tekkrath ships suddenly shifted formation, their sleek designs twisting to face a new threat. Through the clouds of smoke and debris, the human fleet emerged. The Sovereign led the charge, its weapon systems lighting up the atmosphere with bolts of plasma and kinetic rounds. Fighters swarmed around the larger ships, engaging the Tekkrath forces with ruthless precision. In the command center, Kellen's voice broke through the stunned silence. "Counselor, it's the humans. They're here." A flicker of hope ignited in Myra's chest. She stepped forward, her voice steady as she spoke into the comms. "Admiral Drake, on behalf of the Zelleron Commonwealth, thank you." We had nearly lost hope. Drake's voice came through, calm and resolute. "Hope's a dangerous thing to lose. Let's make sure it's not in vain." As the human fleet engaged the Tekroth with a ferocity unmatched by any force the Zellorans had ever seen, Myra allowed herself a moment of belief. Perhaps the galaxy had not abandoned them after all. The human fleet's arrival was nothing short of a revelation for Arcadia Prime. For decades, the Zelleran people had considered humanity to be an enigmatic presence in the galaxy, more myth than reality. Stories of their ingenuity, their defiance in the face of impossible odds, and their retreat from galactic affairs after the Orion Wars had become the stuff of legends. But now, as their sleek ships carved through the Tekroth forces, the reality of humanity's strength was undeniable. On the bridge of the Sovereign, Admiral Elena Drake monitored the unfolding battle with a practiced eye. The Tekroth fleet was formidable, but humanity's advanced tactical systems and coordinated strikes had already begun to turn the tide. The holographic display before her mapped every engagement, every maneuver, as her officers relayed updates in rapid succession. "Admiral," Commander Grant reported, "enemy warships are regrouping near the Eastern Hemisphere. They're attempting to flank us." Drake nodded, her mind calculating the best response. "Deploy the Vanguard and Resolute to intercept. Support them with fighter squadrons Delta and Echo. Ensure the ground teams remain protected." As the orders were carried out, Drake allowed herself a brief moment to reflect. The Zelleran distress call had reached them at a critical juncture. Humanity had spent decades rebuilding after the Orion Wars, focusing inward rather than outward. The decision to intervene on Arcadia Prime had been met with mixed reactions among the fleet's leadership. But Drake knew this battle was about more than just one planet. It was about humanity's place in the galaxy. On the surface of Arcadia Prime, Counselor Myra Vakel watched the battle unfold with a mixture of awe and apprehension. The Emergency Command Center buzzed with activity as technicians scrambled to coordinate efforts with the human forces. Kellen, her aide, was at her side, his expression one of cautious optimism. "Counselor," he said, gesturing to a live feed of the battle, "the humans are incredible. Their ships, their tactics. It's like nothing we've ever seen." Myra nodded, her gaze fixed on the holographic display. "They've brought hope where there was none. But we can't rely on them entirely. We need to find a way to contribute to this fight." Callan hesitated, then spoke carefully. "There is one possibility, Counselor. The Vault of Elders." Myra's eyes widened. The Vault of Elders was a long-forgotten relic of Zelleran history, said to house ancient technology capable of immense power. It had been sealed for centuries, its location hidden even from the Council. Opening it was a gamble, but desperate times called for desperate measures. "Do we know its location?" she asked. Kellen nodded. "We believe it's beneath the ruins of the old capital Erythrea. If we can access it, we might find something that could turn the tide of this war." Myra considered this. The old capital was deep within Tekroth-controlled territory. Reaching it would be perilous, but the potential reward outweighed the risk. She turned to Kellen, determination hardening her features. Kellen said, "Assemble a team," she ordered. "We're going to the vault." The journey to Erythreum was fraught with danger. Myra, Kellen, and a small team of resistance fighters moved under the cover of darkness, avoiding Tekroth patrols and navigating the treacherous ruins. The once grand city was a haunting sight, its towering spires reduced to rubble and its streets choked with debris. The air was thick with the acrid scent of smoke and the faint hum of Tekroth's drones patrolling overhead. "Keep moving," Myra whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant sounds of battle. "We're close." Kellen consulted a handheld scanner, its screen flickering with faint signals. The vault should be just ahead, beneath the central plaza. As they approached the plaza, the team came to an abrupt halt. A squad of Tekrith drones stood guard, their sleek, insect-like forms gleaming in the dim light. Myra signaled for silence, her mind racing for a solution. Engaging the drones head-on was suicide, but they couldn't afford to turn back. "Counselor," Kellen murmured, "I have an idea. If we can create a diversion, we might be able to slip past them." Myra nodded. "Do it." Kellen activated a small device, tossing it toward a nearby building. Moments later, it emitted a high-pitched whine, followed by a burst of light. The Tekrith drones reacted immediately, converging on the source of the disturbance. Seizing the opportunity, Myra and her team moved swiftly across the plaza, descending into the hidden entrance to the vault. The Vault of Elders was a marvel of ancient Zelleran engineering. The air was cool and still, the walls adorned with intricate carvings that glowed faintly in the darkness. At the center of the chamber stood a massive console, its surface covered in alien symbols and controls. Myra approached cautiously, her heart pounding. "Kellen, can you make sense of this?" she asked. Kellen studied the console, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's a power source. The readings are off the charts. If we can activate it, it might be enough to disrupt the Tekrath systems." "Do it," Myra said. As Kellen worked, the chamber began to hum with energy. The carvings on the walls grew brighter, casting an otherworldly glow. A deep vibration filled the air, resonating through the ruins. Myra felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this ancient technology could be the key to their survival. But the activation did not go unnoticed. Outside the vault, the Tekrith drones regrouped, their sensors zeroing in on the disturbance. Alarms blared as reinforcements descended upon the plaza, their movements swift and coordinated. "We've got company," one of the resistance fighters warned, his voice tense. Father was correct. "Hold him off," Myra ordered. "Kellen, how much longer?" "Almost there," he replied, his fingers flying over the controls. The resistance fighters took up defensive positions, their weapons firing bursts of plasma at the advancing Tekrath. The air was filled with the sounds of combat, the clash of technology and desperation. Myra stayed by Kellen's side, her eyes darting between the console and the battle outside. Finally, with a triumphant shout, Kellen stepped back. "It's done! The power surge is building! We need to get out of here! Now!" Myra didn't hesitate. "Fall back, everyone, to the extraction point." The team retreated through the ruins, the energy from the vault pulsing around them. As they emerged into the open air, the ground beneath them trembled. A blinding wave of light erupted from the plaza, spreading outward in a cascade of energy. The Tekrath drones froze mid-magnetism, their systems overwhelmed by the surge. In the skies above, Tekrath warships faltered, their formations breaking as their controls failed. From her vantage point, Myra watched as the tide of battle shifted. The human fleet seized the opportunity, their ships pressing the attack with renewed vigor. The Tekrath, once an unstoppable force, now seemed vulnerable. "We did it," Callan said, his voice filled with awe. Myra placed a hand on his shoulder. "We gave them a fighting chance. Now, let's make sure it counts." As the battle raged on, the discovery of the vault and its ancient power became a turning point in the fight for Arcadia Prime. Humanity's arrival had brought hope, but it was the unity of two worlds, one ancient, one rising, that would determine the fate of the Zelleran people. The energy wave from the Vault of Elders rippled across Arcadia Prime, a luminous cascade that disrupted Tekrath's systems and reignited the spark of resistance. For the first time in months, the Zelleran people had a glimpse of hope. But hope alone wouldn't secure victory. The battle was far from over. Admiral Elena Drake's fleet capitalized on the Tekrath's temporary disarray. The Sovereign led a decisive charge, its advanced weaponry cutting through enemy warships with surgical precision. The Techwrath, despite their technological prowess, struggled to adapt to the unpredictable tactics of the human fleet. "Admiral, our scans indicate a massive buildup of energy near the vault," Commander Grant reported, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Drake's eyes narrowed as she studied the holographic display. "It's likely a countermeasure. They won't let this go unanswered. Prepare the fleet for evasive maneuvers and alert the ground teams. We need to secure that site at all costs." The command was relayed instantly. Across the battlefield, human and Zelleran forces braced themselves for the Techwrath's retaliation. The stakes had never been higher. On the surface, Counselor Myra Veckel and her team regrouped at a makeshift command post near the outskirts of Erythrea. The activation of the vault had come at a cost. Several resistance fighters had fallen during their retreat, and the Techwrath's response was growing more aggressive by the minute. Kellen worked tirelessly to stabilize the ancient systems they had awoken. The console he had retrieved from the vault was a masterpiece of alien engineering, its glowing interface a blend of Zelleran and unknown technology. "Counselor," he said, his voice tinged with urgency, "I've managed to isolate the energy signature. It's emitting a signal, one that the Techwrath seem to be tracking." Stetnasayan. Myra frowned. "Can we disable it?" Kellen shook his head. "Not without losing the power we've harnessed. But there might be another way. If we can amplify the signal, we could overload their systems completely. It's risky, but it might buy us enough time to turn the tide." Myra considered the proposal. Amplifying the signal would require direct access to the vault, which was now surrounded by Techwrath forces. The thought of returning to the ruins filled her with dread, but she knew it was their best shot. "Do it," she said finally. "I'll lead the team to the vault. Kellen, stay here and coordinate with the human fleet. We're going to need all the support we can get." Kellen met their gazes and smiled. The journey back to the vault was even more perilous than before. Techwrath patrols swarmed the area, their movements erratic as they attempted to recover from the disruption. Myra's team moved with practiced precision, their every step calculated to avoid detection. As they approached the entrance, the ground trembled beneath them. A low, guttural hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. Myra's heart sank as she realized the source of the noise. "Techwrath reinforcements," one of her fighters whispered, his voice barely audible over the din. "We're out of time," Myra said. "Stick to the plan. Get to the console and amplify the signal. I'll handle the reinforcements." Her team hesitated, but the resolve in her voice left no room for argument. They pressed forward, leaving Myra and a handful of fighters to hold the line. The first wave of Techwrath forces descended like a storm. Myra's team met them with everything they had, their weapons lighting up the darkness. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and a deafening roar of battle. Myra fought with a ferocity she hadn't known she possessed, her every move driven by the knowledge that failure was not an option. In the heart of the vault, Kellen's hands flew over the console, his mind racing to keep up with the ancient technology. The carvings on the walls pulsed in rhythm with the energy surge, casting eerie shadows across the chamber. "Come on," he muttered under his breath. "Just a little more." Outside, the Techwrath's counterattack intensified. The ground team's defenses were crumbling, their ammunition running low. Myra's fighters fell one by one, their sacrifices buying precious seconds for Kellen to complete his task. Finally, with a triumphant cry, he activated the amplification sequence. The chamber erupted in a blinding wave of light, the energy surge radiating outward in a massive pulse. Techwrath forces within the vicinity were thrown into disarray, their systems overloaded and their movements erratic. Myra's vision blurred as the light engulfed her. She felt a surge of heat and energy, followed by a deafening silence. When she opened her eyes, The battlefield was transformed. The Tekrath were retreating, their forces in complete disarray. The energy pulse had crippled their command structure, leaving them vulnerable to the combined might of the human fleet and the Zelleran resistance. In orbit, Admiral Drake watched the Tekrath's retreat with a mixture of relief and determination. The battle wasn't over yet, but the tide had turned decisively in their favor. "Admiral, the Tekrath fleet is pulling back," Commander Grant reported. "Our forces are in pursuit." Drake nodded. "Maintain the pressure, but don't overextend. We've won the battle for Arcadia Prime, but the war is far from over." XO. As the fleet moved to secure the planet, Drake allowed herself a brief moment to reflect. Humanity's intervention had made all the difference, but it was the courage and ingenuity of the Zelleran people that had truly turned the tide. On the surface, Myra and her remaining fighters regrouped at the command post. Their faces were etched with exhaustion, but their eyes shone with hope. The activation of the vault had been a gamble, but it had paid off in ways they couldn't have imagined. "Counselor," Kellen said, his voice filled with quiet pride, "we did it. The Tekrath are in retreat." Myra placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression a mixture of gratitude and determination. "This is just the beginning. We've won a battle, but there's still a war to fight, and we'll fight it together." As the sun rose over Arcadia Prime, the scars of battle were evident. But so too was the resilience of its people. With humanity at their side, the Zellorans had found a new strength, a strength that would carry them through the trials to come.